Hey, RetconRaider here. Today's video is dedicated to Ash and Forbidden One. Thanks for your support, guys. That said, let's get started. And welcome back to Stygian, Reign of the Old Ones, as we continue investigating the Arkham Stabber. Now, we actually do have some pretty decent leads, but last time we ended up getting a bit sidetracked by Krog and his charming invisible friend. We've got a bit of a death curse now, but that's fine. Just one of the hazards of being an occult detective. Anyway, let's get back to it. And that would be our one-armed detective. Let's see what he has to say about all this. Oh, and I guess we really should talk to that guy at the bar, too. A bulky man with a missing arm is occupying one of the grimy tables of the old eel. It appears he is struggling to drink his troubles away, but the pain written on his face tells a different story. He ceases his agonizing for a short while to glance over at you. I have no plans to share the table, pal. Find yourself another spot to collapse, all right? You seem troubled. He looks pained, whether by his condition or by you can't be sure. And you seem like a very smart man, very smart indeed. Are you Detective Wilkins? Well done, you found me. You must be a detective too. He exhales deeply with a pained look on his face. What do you want from me? I'm interested in your last case. You're asking me the last thing I want to remember in this world? I lost my fucking arm over that psycho murderer. He shouts at you while struggling to open his whiskey bottle one-handed. Get lost. What would change your mind? Do I fucking look like I want to discuss this? He looks at what remains of his severed limb. Do you know how this feels? The pain you can cope with, if you're lucky, but the itching, the damned itching never relents. That's the real hell. Have you ever tried itching a part of you that ain't there anymore? No. That's good, because let me tell you something. You can't. Now leave me be so I can properly mourn over, all the things I like to do with my right hand. Maybe I can help you with your condition. What can you do? I've heard people calling this phantom pain. How can you heal a non-existent arm? The pain is in your mind. If we can somehow deceive your senses about your missing arm, the pain will cease. You sound like a doctor now. Do you think you can stop the pain and the itching? Or more precisely, the pain of not being able to itch something that isn't there? He tips up his glass of moonshine and finishes it in one gulp. Hopeless. If I can create a reflection of your intact arm to deceive your senses, it may ease your suffering. I don't know what you're planning to do, but I'm already looking forward to it. The phantom pain. It seems Wilkins' indecisiveness on the Arkham Stabber case cost him an arm. He is suffering from severe phantom pain, and won't be much help to me unless I find a way to help him first. A simple reflection trick can help his condition. Okay, so normally I'd just craft what we need, but that's not really an option this time around. I guess we'll have to swing by the pharmacy. First, though, let's have a chat with this guy. You see a tipsy, talkative-looking blonde man leaning against the bar. His reddish eyes roam the room as if looking for someone. Sorry to bother you, sir, but may I ask you a question? Sure. I see you've just arrived at Marino's fine establishment, and I was curious whether you happened to see a rustic-looking fellow hanging around outside. No, I didn't. You didn't? Good. I must have been imagining his primitive gaze upon my back. Let me introduce myself. I am Stanley Fredkin. I used to be a lecturer in the literature department at Miskatonic, before committing wholly to my true intellectual passion, the study of folklore. But we can talk more about me later. In the meantime, may I buy you a drink, sir? Sure. He turns to Marino. Some whiskey for this fine gentleman here, and not the usual rotgut you serve. Real whiskey, if you please. Here you go, sir. Stanley raises his glass and takes a big sip of Marino's questionable whiskey. Now, what were we talking about? Why are you looking for the rustic man? I'm afraid he is the one who is looking for me. I've had some minor problems with my current employer. Nothing I can't resolve, of course, but I suspect he may have sent that illiterate to find me. Who is this employer? He's a foreign investor who is interested in my advice. A foreign investor? In a town lost in space and time? Sounds legit. I see. Another thing. Of course, sir. I'm glad to have the opportunity to engage in an intellectual conversation with another sophisticated mind. Rare in this town, huh? But enough about me. What's on your mind? You mentioned Miskatonic. Did you mean the university on Main Street? No, I meant the river. Don't people learn about major water bodies in school these days? Forgive me. Sometimes the sarcastic Stanley takes hold. Yes, I used to work at Miskatonic University. It is no boast to say that I was a mighty fine instructor during my time at the university. What a sad day it must have been when the students learned I had chosen the path of the wandering folklorist. What have you been studying lately? Oh, I see that I've aroused your interest. I've been known to have that effect on people, being an intellectual inspiration and all. To answer your question, I've been in Vermont recording the legends of the winged ones of the hills. A very profound topic indeed. From Pennacook myths to the legends of Governor Wentworth's colonial grants, you will find mention of these winged beings from the sky. Whispers of these creatures may be found even in the folklore of the distant Himalayas. There must be a reason for these beliefs to be so widespread, right? And what do you suspect is the reason? There are things I am willing to share for the benefit of the public good, and there are things that I am not. I'm fascinated by the mysteries of the unseen world. Please continue. We'd better leave this topic behind, sir. By the way, have I told you about my latest book on Kingsport folklore? No, you haven't. It was very well received in academic circles, and among more common readers, too. You must have at least heard about it, right? No, I haven't. You haven't? Perhaps you're not quite as erudite as I first believed. He seems disappointed. Otherwise, you certainly would have known about a book of such cultural significance. Now, what were we talking about? So, you study folktales. New England folklore, to be specific. I'm sure you've heard of my book. I have, from you, just now. This book doesn't sound essential. It may not sound essential to a person who hasn't the slightest interest in the 100-years-old oral tradition which defined the very lands in which he dwells. Gosh, is there anything you're not good at? Other than the vulgar athletic disciplines? No, I don't believe so. I have always maintained that with a healthy brain, you can achieve anything. Remember these words, sir. Invest in your brain. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. Goodbye, Mr. Stanley. So soon? All right, leave, sir. Your choice. He quickly tosses the remaining whiskey down. You're no different, of course. Sorry? Can't you recognize a person of natural quality? Do I have to tell you that out of all of these people, all these clueless illiterates, I, Stanley Fredkin, have possibly discovered an escape from this hellhole? I was chosen. What are you talking about? He suddenly comes to his senses. Nothing. Nothing at all. Damn this vile whiskey of yours, Marino. I had better take my leave. Very strange. Anyway, we need to swing by the pharmacy to pick something up for Detective Wilkins. But we're actually running pretty low on cigs at the moment. I think what we need to do is go by the bank first, crack those 2 safes we saw, and then we can sell that stuff off for the cigs we need. After that, we'll get back to Detective Wilkins. Poor Julian, just rotting out in the middle of the street. Someone will have to clean that up eventually. Gentlemen. We already cracked the armored car. Yeah. I think it's just the 2 safes further in. There we go. Let's get that hand slotted. Minor valuables. Not bad. A gold ring and some religious paraphernalia. Interesting. Alright, let's get over to the pharmacy. Oh, nice. Looks like we've got a new batch of loot. Wow. That was actually a pretty substantial amount of stuff. Oh, hold on. Actually, we found that fragment of a mirror a while back. Let's see if that works. If we're lucky, we might be able to save a few sigs here. Ah, nice. Have you found a way to make the pain go, or are you just stalling me off? This should help with your pain. You set the mirror fragment on the table and adjust it to display a symmetrical reflection of Wilkins' intact arm. You can see from his face that the persistent tension that's been bothering him is already fading. Very nice. Let's see what he has to say. That feels much better. The itching, it's gone. How strange that the brain can be deceived with such a simple trick. Thanks, sir. Much appreciated. You're welcome. He takes a big sip of cheap whiskey. Fire away. I owe you now. Let's talk about the Arkham Stabber. He lets out a deep breath. So, you want to know about the Stabber? Your choice. You still got 4 limbs after all. He forces himself to concentrate. When I was on the case, the Stabber was targeting mob members. And naturally, this got the attention of Waxface. If you kill the king's men, the king comes after you, right? The Stabber was a threat to his authority, somebody pissing in his backyard, so his men hired me to find the killer. He wants to preserve his image of invincibility. That's understandable. Look, you don't understand shit about that. He looks around anxiously and lowers his voice. Good Samaritan, that bringer of law, unseen Caesar, whatever. With the victims, what were their names? He clumsily pulls out an old notebook and finds a torn page inside. Salvador and Abel, no one important. Clueless, fresh recruits for the mob, that's all. Then I looked into how they were killed, and that proved interesting indeed. The wounds all pointed to one thing, a sword, and a big one, with a broad blade. Pierced those fellas dozens of times, until they were human colanders. I've seen a lot in this profession, but that was ferocious. Salvador and Abel, I remember those names. They were registered at the hotel with Julian, the last victim. That's interesting. Wilkins lights a cigarette. Finally, we may have found a pattern. So, those three came to the hotel together. The next question is, are they all dead? As far as I know, no. There's another one called Keelan. Then we can assume the murders won't stop until this Keelan fellow gets a few more breathing holes. Unless, with a puff, he adds a miniature gray cloud to the already obnoxious air of the eel. He himself is the stabber. What makes you think that? Think about it. Riffraff arriving from out of town, probably into some shady business. And when the deed is done, they turn on each other like rabid dogs. I've seen it happen before. Whatever the truth is, you should keep an eye out for this Keelan fellow. He may be the key to all of this. Will do. What else have you got on the case? Nice. You know, I have to admit that you're not too bad at this. When you started asking questions, I wasn't expecting much, and that's why I kept my trap shut on my real leads. No offense, but I prefer not to point my finger at suspects, especially after seeing how brutal the mob can be. I know this is a bad habit. Work ethics can cost you an arm in this place. Are you going to tell me how you lost your arm? You really like to play detective, don't you? I was like you once, intrigued by the motivations of the people, curious about how they think and behave. A black shadow falls over his eyes. But there are some things you shouldn't be curious about, and some people. Wilkins takes a deep drag from his cig. As I mentioned, after some time on the case, I had a few strong suspects. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't hold the facts together to make a concrete accusation. I didn't have enough evidence, and the detective's curse was all over me. Indecisiveness. Sometime later, I was summoned to the court of Waxface. He looks around before continuing in a whisper. Seeing that fucker in person almost gave me a heart attack. He asked me the identity of the stabber. What did you tell him? In the end, I didn't give him a name. Instead, I gathered my courage to ask for more time. I guaranteed I would find the killer soon. He seemed to be listening at first, and asked me one thing in the end. One fucking question. Right or left? I didn't get it. I was too nervous. So the cold-blooded bastard continued. His flat, motionless face, beastly eyes. Something was plainly wrong. Evil, you hear me? He said, I'll show you how simple it is to make a decision. Your right arm or your left? To remind me not to be indecisive again when it came to his requests. Pure frustration is rising inside the man. I had to choose fast or I would lose both. He shuts his eyes as if experiencing the pain once again. So I chose. He finally snaps. Fuck this case, and fuck the day I became a bloody detective. I'm sorry, Wilkins. You did the right thing. Right, and all it cost me was my right arm. Nuts. Now, tell me about these suspects of yours. Yeah, I had 3 good trails, but they all went cold. My first suspect was a redskin called, he struggles with the pronunciation, Wijotl. The other one was a magician called Horatio. And lastly, I had a witness, a mute girl. Tell me of this Wijotl. He's this crazy Indian who believes he's continuing the ways of his ancestors. Formed his own tribe in Dead Willows after everything went to hell. A shanty town of stinking tents. Wijotl is a savage son of a bitch, excuse my language. Too eager to use his machete on anyone he defines as a white oppressor, especially mob people. Motive? Check. Potential murder weapon? Check. I'd pay him a visit if I were you, but you've been warned, mister. He's awfully protective about his territory. He prefers to let that machete do the talking. Noted. Where is Dead Willows? He draws a circle on your map. It used to be a resort area along the Miskatonic River, full of white willow trees. Fancy place. You don't need to be a detective to guess why it's called Dead Willows these days. Tell me about Horatio. Horatio the Magnificent, they used to call him. I saw nothing magnificent about the man, though. A total wreck. He was pretty vocal about his hate for Waxface. Suicidal, right? Horatio had all the motive to go after some mobster blood, and I know he uses old-fashioned swords in his shows. You know, the coffin and the blades and nonsense like that. Is he alive? The last time I saw him, he was staying in room number 203 of the Essex Hotel. Considering his suicidal tendencies, might be a good idea to get your ass over there in a hurry. Who's the mute girl you mentioned? Donna the Mute is what the other tunnel kids call her. She wasn't always mute, so I heard. They say she became like that after witnessing the murder of Abel. The eyes on that little girl. Looking at the same dreadful moment no one else could see. I tried everything, but could never get her to talk. Where can I find this kid? If you think you can do better, be my guest. She lives with the other orphans in the collapsed train tunnel, in the northeast part of French Hill. Thanks, Wilkins. I'd better go. I have a murderer to find. And you still have 2 arms, pal. You owe old Wilkins a drink. Don't forget that. Good hunting. Okay. Made some solid progress there. Picked up a few new leads. Let's have a quick look at these level ups. Now, I think it's fair to say that at this point we're not going to be putting any points into firearms. Let's drop a point into psychology instead. Honestly, we probably should have done that sooner. It's either that or investigation. Next, we've got our perk, and I'll be honest, I have no idea what would fit our character here. We're obviously not much of a fighter, so most of these perks are pretty useless to us. Something like extra sanity or panic resistance could certainly help, though. Controlled Mind. Reaction +2, critical failure chance -1. That's actually not bad, even for a character like ours. Haggler's not bad either. Gunslinger would be a go-to if we actually put points into firearms. let's go with cold-blooded. Resisting panic is always a good thing. Oh, right, and 1 point into occult. Next we've got the outsider, and we'll keep him focused on medicine and melee. Which means we'll go with a perk that further boosts his melee fighting ability. And then we've got Sonia, who will, of course, put points into science and firearms. We don't really have much of a dedicated tank, so let's boost her defense too. Alright, moving on. Let's see here. Okay, so we've got 3 potential leads. Let's start with those kids. We did just boost our psychology. Not much, but every little bit helps. Oh, okay. A rustic-looking fellow approaches you with a note in his hand. He puts the small folded paper into your hand. Who are you? He wanders away without a word. Very mysterious. I finally found the exit that I mentioned to you. I can get us out. Meet me in my house at number 39 Main Street. Stanley Fredkin. Well, that was quick. Alright, one more thing for our to-do list. Oh, and now the outsider wants to talk. The outsider speaks as the rustic-looking man leaves. Was he a servant carrying the word of his lord? Last time I saw his master, he looked to be in considerable trouble. Interesting. Really expected that conversation to go on a little longer. Look where they've taken you! Well said. Oh, hey, the trapdoor is open again. You know, we were going to talk to those kids first, but let's check out the trapdoor instead, before it ends up resealing. You discover an airflow coming from behind the wall, which may be signaling a weakness in its structure. You may try to break in with the proper equipment. Sure, let's give it a shot. Intriguing. We'll take a look at that in just a moment. Ah, lovely. Yeah, that seems about right. Ooh, Tongue of the Dead. Most likely the creation of a pagan cult, where the realms of the temporal and the ethereal were seamlessly intertwined. Invocation spells such as this were the staples of Wiccan magic. I believe that will let us speak to the dead, but we'll have to learn it first. Not bad. Not bad at all. They say that the deceased tell no tales, but in this case, the abhorrence bursting from the opposite wall doesn't exactly leave the observer bereft of clues regarding the cause of death. Unfortunately for the intrusive and equally venturesome dead man, this ancient sarcophagus was not to forever detain its menacing resident betwixt its worm-ridden confines. Well, we can't do anything here until we learn that spell, so let's check out that hole. Ah, shoot. Okay, hold on. Yep, we just triggered events out of order. Well, we're already past the 30-minute mark anyway, and this should be relatively easy to fix, so let's hit the pause button for now, and we'll pick up here next time. See you then. Oh, and remember, although I do love playing Stygian, Reign of the Old Ones, you can find out more about the game by visiting the official website, the official YouTube channel, the official Facebook page, the official Twitter feed, or the original crowdfunding campaign over on Kickstarter. Links are in the description.